this Kristen Jacobson.
I'm a week out from having done my TEDx talk and just wanted to share a little bit about my experiences over the past week. To be honest, I was a little hesitant to make this video because it feels like I'm being even more vulnerable and sort of exposing myself, but I really had to kind of look inward and realize that, the reason I do this work in the first place is to help others. So I think by sharing my own experience while vulnerable, I'm hoping that it can help one of you to feel a little bit better about your experiences. So just to recap, I shared a lot of sort of tips for managing the anxiety and fear going into public speaking. So I covered some breathing techniques, using mindfulness practices. I was smelling the stress relief oil, emotional freedom technique, which is the tapping, walking out the adrenaline. I shared some memorization tactics if your speech or talk is something that requires memorization. And then the possibility of a beta blocker, which is medication that helps decrease the physical symptoms of anxiety. So I did all of these things leading up to my talk. And to be honest, my anxiety walking on stage was pretty manageable as a result. Now I'm dealing with the aftermath of the talk. So there's something called a vulnerability hangover, and this is a term that was coined by Brené Brown. And it's basically after you do something where you feel kind of overexposed, there can be some anxiety in the aftermath. And that's what I've been feeling. Essentially, the talk didn't go quite as well as I had hoped. And, I shared this with a lot of my colleagues and family and friends, and everyone's been super supportive. And, the main sort of reassurance I've been receiving is that, you are probably judging yourself more harshly than anybody else is, and that it probably went better than you thought. And in my logical brain, I know that's probably true. But I do have to wait about a month to get the video footage to see how it actually went. So of course, the emotional part of my brain that deals with imposter syndrome and self-doubt and fear of judgment, that part of my brain is sort of creating this narrative and catastrophizing about how the talk actually went. So one thing to be aware of is that this vulnerability hangover can affect certain people more than others, and introverts and highly sensitive people tend to be more prone to these vulnerability hangovers. And I just happen to be both. So that's kind of working against me, but I know that it's how my nervous system is wired, and there's not really anything I can do to change that. I just have to sort of lean into it and use some coping skills to help. So some of the things that I've done to sort of cope with this vulnerability hangover is one, just to be honest about how I'm feeling, right? Just really practice a lot of introspection and self-reflection and just kind of identify like what emotions are in there and what's going on. So in order to kind of help those move through me and dissipate a little bit, I've gone back to the tapping, the emotional freedom technique. So that's really helpful just as a nervous system regulation tool. I've also really had to kind of talk to my inner critic and just reassure that critical part of myself, which I think, we all have to some degree, that it's not as big of a deal and it's not as catastrophic as it feels, right? And that I'm likely focusing on the negative things, whereas probably, 85-90% of the talk was actually really positive. So we just have to be aware of that. We tend to hone in on the negatives and discount a lot of the positives. But the reality is, I still had people coming up to me after the talk and, saying that something really resonated with them or stuck out to them or that they really enjoyed it. And so my brain naturally gravitates toward what I did wrong. And I really have to be intentional about focusing back on, okay, well, there are a lot of positives that happened in the course of the talk as well. And then just viewing this discomfort as growth. This was the first time I was in front of that many people without a script. So I've given talks before, but I always had something to reference and never really had to memorize the speech. So this was the first time that I did that. And, I'm just seeing this as like, it's always a little bit scary and unnerving when you do something new and you're sort of breaking into this new skill set. My goal is to do more public speaking, and you have to start somewhere. So I'm just using this as sort of a learning experience, an opportunity for growth, and really trying not to kind of beat myself up too much about it, and just reframing that vulnerability as a strength that like, okay, well, at least I put myself out there. I did it. It's over. There's nothing I can do about it, but I did it, and I'm proud of that. So I hope that this information is helpful for you guys just in sort of normalizing a lot of these emotions that come with public speaking, both before and after. Because I think a lot of times we think like, oh, okay, the event is over or the talk is over and I'm good to go now. But there can often be a lot of rumination or second guessing or, that sort of inner critic that shows up after the fact. So I would love to know about your experiences with public speaking, or if you have any other questions, leave a comment, and I will see you guys next week.